Now, we're going to get into the main rules that we're going to be talking about. So this is my summary slide of the rules of part 2, so the rules that govern when boats meet. You can see I've split it up into a couple of different sections. Hopefully, the first thing you notice is there's not actually that many of them. So this is not as complicated as it might have first looked. I've split them up into different groups. So we've got here the main right-of-way rules, as they're called. So there's only 4 of them. There are some rules that limit what the right-of-way boat can do. Again, there's only 3. Then there are some rules that apply when we reach the marks. And then there are some rules that apply when we reach obstructions. So obstructions are things like a shoreline or stuff you can't actually sail through. So that's what an obstruction is. And that's really it. There's a couple of extra bits and pieces here. We've got Rule 14 that gives all boats an obligation to avoid contact. We'll get into that in later sessions. And then there's a couple of bells and whistles at the end. Things like OCS, so if you're over the line at the start, you've capsized or you're interfering, a boat's not racing. So I'm a scientist. I like flow diagrams. So here is a flow diagram for the right-of-way rules of sailing. There's only 3 questions we have to ask ourselves to decide which one of these is the one that applies. The first question, when we start up here, the first question is anybody tacking? If the answer to that question is yes, then we have a rule that applies. If not, then we have a couple of other questions. So what I'm now going to do for the rest of this presentation is talk you through how we answer each of these questions. Is anybody tacking? Are you on the same tack? And if you are you overlapped or are you not? If you can answer all those questions, you'll be able to decide which of these 4 right-of-way rules is the one that applies. We have a rule which says if you are tacking, so after a boat passes head to wind, she shall keep clear of other boats until she's on a close hauled course. So here we have yellow has passed 3 head to wind, so she is tacking and she must keep clear of blue. So it's very straightforward. If you're tacking, you have to keep clear. Now you might say, well, what if both boats are tacking? Well, the rule goes on to say if 2 boats are subject to this rule at the same time, the one on the other's port side or the one astern shall keep clear. We sometimes summarize this is a mouthful. We summarize this often to if you're on the right, you've got the rights. So in general, looking upwind like that, it's the boat that is on the right. If they're both tacking on the right, that will be the right of way. Probably the most important word to pull out of this rule is going to be keep clear. So what does it mean to keep clear? And you're gonna keep hearing those words over and over the next 6 weeks. They're probably some of the most important words in the rules. So we're going to introduce what that means. If you look at your rule book, you'll notice that keep clear is in italics. That means it's got a definition. If we turn to the definition of keep clear, you'll find this. So there's 2 parts. I've grayed out the second part because we'll get to that a bit later. But if we look at the first part, a boat keeps clear of a right-of-way boat if the right-of-way boat can sail her course with no need to take avoiding action. So if we look here at blue and yellow that are obviously on a collision course, they're getting closer together. There will come a point at which the right-of-way boat, in this case blue, needs to take avoiding action in order to avoid a collision. At the moment that happens, that is when yellow will have failed to have kept clear. So that is the test, whether the right-of-way boat can sail her course with no need to take avoiding action. So if that happens, the keep clear boat will not have kept clear. What does her course mean? In general, that is your compass bearing. So if you imagine a line coming straight out of the bow of blue, that is her course at any given moment. And if that course changes, or if she's had to change her course to avoid contact, so she's taken avoiding action, that will mean the keep clear boat has not kept clear. So that's all there is to the definition of keep clear. Notice that the word contact does not feature in that part of the definition. There is no need for contact for a boat to fail to have kept clear. As I said earlier, all boats have an obligation to avoid contact. And so really, even if you are the right-of-way boat, you are at risk of being penalized yourself if you force the issue and try to cause contact when it was avoidable. And then on we go. So we've already addressed the first question. Is anybody tacking? Yes or no? So if you decide that nobody is tacking, and in all honesty, that is probably the more likely of all the scenarios. Rule 13 doesn't apply all that often. Then that leads us to the next question. Are you on the same tack? Well, we've already sort of talked about how we decide what tack a boat is on. So hopefully you're all okay with that. If the answer to that is no, you're not on the same tack, then we have a very straightforward rule that we get led to in those cases. That is port starboard, or rule number 10. So nice and straightforward. When boats are in opposite tacks, a port tack boat shall keep clear of a starboard tack boat. And again, you see that word keep clear, meaning if the right-of-way boat can sail her course with no need to take avoiding action. So it's exactly the same test. And as I said, we're going to keep coming back to those words, keep clear. So if you're on opposite tacks, the port tack boat must keep clear. We can go back to our flow diagram now. We've already answered 2 of the questions. So now we've only got 1 question left, which is if we decide nobody is tacking and the boats are on the same tack, the answer is yes. Then we're left with this final question. Are you overlapped? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, we have a rule for that. If the answer is no, we also have a rule for that. So it will either be a windward leeward or clear ahead, clear astern situation. So how do we decide, first of all, if boats are going to be overlapped? So hopefully you'll see this is not rocket science. Again, it's a defined term. We just look at the definition. So overlap. One boat is clear astern of another when her hull and equipment in normal position are behind a line of beam from the aftmost point of the other boat's hull and equipment in normal position. It's a bit of a mouthful, but hopefully you can see it's not as complicated as it potentially looks. Here, we've got blue and yellow again. In this situation, to decide if they're overlapped, we just draw a dotted line from the aftermost point of yellow's hull and equipment in normal position. So we ask ourselves, what is the furthest back point of that boat's hull and equipment? And we draw a perpendicular line across it, like so. Then ask, is the other boat behind that line, or are they in front of that line? So in this case, blue is behind that line. She's therefore clear astern. If, on the other hand, blue was in front of that line, she would be overlapped. In this case, she'd be overlapped, we'd say, to windward. So she would be the windward boat here. You might ask, why does the rule say normal position? Well, this is a very complicated way of saying something that seems simple. Why are the words normal position there? And the reason really is so that you can't game it by changing the position of your equipment in order to artificially create an overlap. So take this situation where we have blue and yellow now running with spinnakers. So they're sailing downwind with spinnakers. Here, in this first situation on the left, yellow has let her spinnaker sheet out. So her spinnaker now is flying in front of the boat much further than it would have been normally. So that is not how yellow would normally be sailing downwind with her spinnaker. She's deliberately tried to make her boat longer so as to create an overlap. We would then decide that spinnaker is not in its normal position, so it does not count for the purposes of an overlap. And then if it doesn't count, then we would go back to the hull. So that would be the furthest, the furthest most point on that boat. And again, that's not now behind the line, so they would not be overlapped, they'd be clear. If, however, yellow sails normally, the spinnaker is where it would normally be, then it can count for the purposes of an overlap. And so that the yellow and blue would now be overlapped in that case. The other time this happens is with bowsprits. So if you sail and have your boat with a bowsprit and a gennaker, if you put the bowsprit out when it's clearly not in its normal position, for example, you're going upwind, so you would never need the bowsprit, that will not be in its normal position. And so again, that will not count for the purposes of an overlap. So that is why those words are in there. And how you decide what part of the boat is the furthest back point, it is as simple as that. So if you have the transom hung rudder or some other part of the boat that sticks out the back, it will be that point. So it'll be the furthest bit back of your boat will be, or the boat that's in front, that will be that's in its normal position, that will be the point at which that overlap starts. Okay, so now we move on to the final question: are you overlapped? So if on the same tack, so if we've decided that the answer to that question is yes, then it's rule of number 11. So the windward boat has to keep clear. So the boat that is closest to the wind is the one that must keep clear. And if the answer is no, then it's the boat that is clearest stern that has to keep clear. So hopefully that's quite straightforward. So overlapped, it's windward boat keeps clear. Not overlapped, boat clearest stern has to keep clear. And now you might be asking, well, we said that keep clear was defined about whether the right-of-way boat could sail her course. Clearly, in both of these situations, the right-of-way boat can sail her course pretty easily. But actually, the definition of keep clear has a second part. So it says, when the boats are overlapped, if the right-of-way boat can also change course in both directions without immediately making contact. So it's this second part of the definition that we use when we're talking about boats that are going to be overlapped. So if we look at blue and yellow here in position 1, yellow is going to be the windward boat. Again, the wind coming down from the top of the page. So yellow has to keep clear. And we ask ourselves, for blue, can she change course in both directions without immediately making contact? I think the answer here is yes. So that means yellow is keeping clear. Then we see the gap is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and eventually there will become a point, maybe around position 5, where now if blue did change course in either direction, there would immediately be contact. That means yellow is now no longer keeping clear. So that's all there is to that. Again, there is no need for there actually to be contact here. This test is a theoretical one, so you don't actually have to show that there was contact. You just have to show that the distance was small enough that if you had changed course, there would have been. And obviously, this will depend on the type of boats. You can get much closer in optimists than you can in 35-foot cruisers, and it will also depend on the conditions and that sort of stuff. But you can see the test that would generally be applied to decide if overlapped boats are keeping clear. So that's it. That is all there is to the right-of-way rules of sailing. How easy. You're all now experts, having followed through that far. So all we need to do is use this flowchart to decide, is anybody tacking? If yes, it's going to be rule 13 while tacking. If no, we need to decide if they're on the same tack. If they're not, it's going to be port starboard. If they are they overlapped? If not, then it's clear ahead, clear astern. The boat clear astern must keep clear. If they are overlapped, then it's going to be windward leeward. The boat to windward must keep clear.